Everyone with experience in gaming has always had that one franchise that they hold on to. Whether it be their first introduction to the hobby of putting cartridges or discs in a console and powering it on, or it can even leave a self-discovery that not only burst their gamer core, but can also be something they can hold near and dear to them outside of just nostalgia. For me, Sonic did the latter as it introduced me to both the lore and the multiverse with Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. Between the character's positive cool and cocky attitude, the friends and foes he interacts with, and the overall feel of exploration and various playstyles, opened my mind like some sort of portal entering an unknown. And a very good unknown at that. Regardless of your consensus on this direction from switching from 2D with the Genesis or Mega Drive era to 3D going forward, this game helped revolutionize the franchise and what the Dreamcast can do from a technological standpoint, and also explored the world within its characters, even if the console itself didn't sell all that well. There's also Sonic Adventure 2 on the same console, which birthed my love and connection to Shadow as equally, if not more so than Sonic's character did. Even if 2/3 of the gameplay are 100 steps back compared to its predecessor, the game was still enjoyable for its darker tone, its compelling storytelling, and Sega going out of their way to make this one of the best games ever made for its final console. Flaws for both games aside. Sonic Heroes became the first home console game to be released on multiple platforms and not on a handheld after Sega became a third-party development conglomerate to try and return back to form with the visual aesthetic of the classic era. Even if the story felt Saturday morning cartoonish and the gameplay became questionable, broken, and repetitive, it still has its charm to others for being the Sonic game of all time. If anything, it's passable to say the least. I have a soft spot for the game, I'm sorry. And then we have this.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Yes, the first thing that I think of with a franchise about a fast hedgehog stopping Wilford Brimley and his inventions are another hedgehog using guns and having aliens being shouted onto Earth like some goddamn isekai. Surely this will be a game loved by many, right? Right? Okay, where do I even begin with what hasn't been said already? This tonal shift from the bright and colorful vibes the three games I mentioned prior to this one, even with the dark storytelling Adventure 2 offered to the table, is strike one. Even if you go into these four games in particular blindfolded and in order of release, you're already in for a recipe of disaster, even with the stock sound on the menu screen. Might as well make this a drinking game. You'll pass out. Trust me. And yes, I'm aware that the shift in tone as well as the guns are what fans wanted, but in this context, it doesn't work in execution with what other games prior did for the franchise. Needless to say, this was released around the time where the early to mid-2000s thought it was a more hardcore and edgier time, though both arguably and debatably. Shadow isn't as much of an edgelord character as others make him out to be. But regarding the vibes this game gives off similarly to those other games before it, it kind of became its own defining subgroup of games for this era that we had to accept. This also includes Devil May Cry, which I've only played the first game and reviewed it amongst other games that I don't know of, aren't aware of, or just haven't even played. But irregardless, we still had mixed feelings about said subgroup in general. But for Devil May Cry, it kinda had an excuse because Hideki Kamiya was able to bring everything he did to the table. And I still need to play the rest of the game's BT dubs. But that's not the eyebrow raiser here. This was made simply because of a poll that lasted from 2004 to 2005 on which character deserves their own game. And of course, Shadow won by a popular vote. So yeah, short development time, polls prior to the game's release, piss poor and rushed storytelling. Strike two. The game starts off with Shadow staring at the horizon, contemplating an identity crisis, his memory loss, and who Maria is. Okay, this point right here, even when taking Adventure 2's characterization of him in here, is automatically strike three. Everyone prepare your anuses for a disaster piece. So said aliens appear causing havoc as Black Doom tells Shadow to bring him the Chaos Emeralds. because, and goes on about his business as Shadow contemplates about needing answers. Black Doom, as a character, doesn't have a lot to his character to give two fucks about, but he's the bad guy if you couldn't tell immediately. Remember in Adventure 2 when Gerald created both Shadow and the Bio-Lizard as a means to benefit humanity, and created the Eclipse Cannon as a means to avenge Maria to kill humanity? And back then you were like, wow, this is quite the lore dump here. But here it adds one of many retcons to said lore, where he made Gerald an offer that he can't refuse by using his DNA to help Gerald create Shadow in general, and the game goes, actually, here's what really happened. It feels less like info dump in this context and more like conflicting information. But in regards to his character, there's no weight to Black Doom as a villain. One day, and also depending on the route you take, and trust me, we'll get to the routes, he'll thank Shadow for following his orders, but then the other he'll throw a hissy fit like he had a toy truck taken away from him, and sometimes even manipulate him into thinking things are going smoothly. Just like Emmy Jones to all of her victims. But for Eggman, it makes sense because he's all about capturing wooden creatures and encasing them into robots for his own technological benefits, and his beef with Sonic constantly foiling his plans. Simple enough. In regards to the shiny Harry Potter Patrick Star wannabe, there's really nothing to process common sense through. This whole slop of a supposed story makes it impossible to process common sense in general. But what is the game about, you might ask? In short, it's all up to you. But in the end, it doesn't even matter! At the start of the game, you start off at Westopolis and you're given one of three options to process your way through things. Same with the other levels. Though while there are 22 levels, the only ones that matter is at the end of the 6 stages, where you have to choose either a good ending or a bad ending to finish said route. But it doesn't matter about the consequences of my own actions because it doesn't change how I, the player, view the narrative, or lack of one to put it at that. The only thing that does matter, and is pure castration at the end of the day, is you have to restart from the beginning to get the proper ending, which leads to what should be the end of an ending: repetition. This game makes you suffer by having to replay levels constantly, especially Westopolis. Meaning if you want to complete the game at full to get the proper ending without a mishap, you have to do 10 playthroughs. What the fuck? Because it's so hard to make a screen select option to go back and complete it here, right? I swear to God, this is the most retarded level of progression from a game I've ever witnessed. I mean, Sonic Heroes did have you play the same stages 4 different times with each team in order to get the last story in that game, but it didn't force feed you with options upon a subdivision of options, on top of even more fucking options with its progression. And despite its glitches and the 0 to 69/420 speed, at least with the speed formation, there's still some level of fun to be had here, with the different perspectives from these characters throughout. I mean, yeah, we never got answers as to who Shadow was after the events of Adventure 2, but while I wish we got answers in that game, that wasn't the main focus of Heroes. It was to stop Metal Sonic, and boom, done. Like I said, simple Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe. This one, like I've already established, retcons and overcomplicates the lore to a crawl. And even by throwing in this gun commander who also befriended Maria in his youth, he wants Shadow redshirted simply because he was the one to blame for the cause of Maria's death. But even with that little info dump, it also doesn't make us connect with him as a character as a means to seek justice for Maria, so shouldn't he have beef with Gunn for doing that to his best friend instead? And I don't even know what kind of EMDR sessions he took, if any. But even if he had to overcome all this trauma while becoming the commander of Gunn himself, what about the one soldier that fired that bullet onto her? Did he die too later because of Maria's death via execution? What about the other witnesses? Did you demote them as well? Is the reason why you're the commander is to avenge her as a means to get to Shadow, who did nothing but try to escape with her? I'm sorry, this makes no goddamn sense, like the entirety of Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. Oh yeah, also, while there are 10 different non-canon endings, only like 3 of them have you karate chop Eggman as a means to finish him off. But moving on from the story, the gameplay is just as all over the place as their characterization and slop of a plot are. They can be as simple as going to the goal ring as a means to nab a Chaos Emerald, or even just go to the goal ring in general in some cases. And there are others that are nothing but excruciating mental pain. There are so many objectives that vary from stage to stage. Between killing enemies, disarming bombs, taking down ships, activating gates, and so on and so forth. So I'm just gonna narrow it down to two of my least favorite ones. One I hate the most is having to hunt down all the artificial chaos via flashback with Maria on the Ark. And it mainly deals with so much exploration, so much backtracking, and making this stage itself overstay its welcome worse than a snail's one-night stand.
Ah, get out of here! Oh, he's got the get out of here, Snail! Go, Snail! Go!
And to add insult to injury, depending on the stage, there are 3 options to choose from, but a minority of them only have 2. And if you want to go lower, that indicates the hero path, whereas upwards is the villain path. Lost Impact only has 2. The normal goal ring, and the artificial chaos mission for the hero path. So I fail to try and look for all the artificial chaos and I go to the goal ring, and so I complete the normal mission and think I'll just go straight like in the neutral path. But nope! High ground, motherfucker! In all honesty, I wish I could think of something original to say about this game, but this is the prime example of what playing shit is like that'll make you more stressed than James Rolfe whenever he's in character. And it actually wasn't until very recently when I discovered, oh, the hero mission is possible to beat in 8 minutes rather than 30 plus that I had to fucking suffer through. Somebody fetch me whiskey! Oh wait, I don't drink. But good news is, I was able to go through this godforsaken mission for close to 13. I swear this game is the equivalent of Holy Pete's lack of brain cells. And same for Johnny Somali, Logan Paul, and other pieces of shit with similar behaviors and lack of accountability as his. As for the other, say it with me now. Collect all 400 rings. The minigame where you have to hit the balloons are what make you suffer through this mission in particular. But take my advice, if you tackle this mission for yourself, skip them and grab any ring within sight. Because it'll be less of a hassle if you do this, but hope to Sindan Kuroto that you don't get hit and lose 10 rings every fucking time! Gee, no wonder Shadow abuses Tails at any opportune moment in the multiverse. It's well fucking deserved! But because of the fact they implemented all this into the game makes the progression one of the weakest points in the entire game. And with a clusterfuck of a narrative thrown into the mix, automatically makes this one of the worst games of all time. But I don't know who's to blame here. Is it Yuji Naka, Takashi Iizuka, the level designers? I don't know. But people have definitely lost their ways because of this in the end. Oh, and there are also weapons to experiment with and vehicles to ride as well as the spin dash, but depending on the types of enemies you defeat, if you kill some aliens, you'll do chaos control as a means to speedrun your way through this stage, while killing gun soldiers lets you spam chaos blast when convenient. Though if you don't feel like using either chaos ability, you could start blasting using infinite ammo. I will say the spin dash was only useful a handful of times, but not in a responsive nor reasonable manner as Adventure 1 and 2's were for both Sonic and Shadow. As for the vehicles, I mean, unless it's mandatory for progression, I'd avoid them at all costs and just rely on your air shoes. But after going through all this cock and ball torture, we finally get to the last story where it's nothing but a race around the clock to stop the Black Comet and the Black Arms from doing more damage. Though regarding the part where Shadow says he's putting his past behind him and going through an identity crisis throughout this game compared to Adventure 2's narrative, it's definitely lackluster here as there's no reason for Shadow to go through this redemption arc again. I mean, back in 2001, it made sense after he was awakened from being cryogenically frozen for 50 years by Eggman, who was also aware of his grandfather's shenanigans. And the only things Shadow remembers from the get-go are his name, the Chaos Emeralds, and the flashback with Maria. I mean, granted, his memory was fuzzy at first, but it wasn't until when Amy encountered him and made him realize what Maria wanted him to do. Give humanity a chance to be happy. And that's what made his character redeemable. This whole concept of making this a continuation of what we got in Heroes and succumbing to these half-assed M. Night Shyamalan twists to do similar things that he did in Adventure 2 doesn't work at all. Again, it just contradicts the whole purpose of how Shadow became relevant to the canon and make everything a bad excuse of Deus Ex Machina, with both Shadow's immunity to Black Doom's gas and mind games, as well as Gerald admitting faults to all this. I mean, Gerald Robotnik, Eggman's grandfather, the true and only father of Shadow the Hedgehog, went from, "All of you ungrateful humans took everything away from me, and now you have to suffer, Mr. Squidward," to, "I've made a terrible mistake with the comet." Just... Anyways, after Black Doom teleports like a little bitch, Shadow goes super and has to defeat this piece of cardboard's ultimate form, Devil Doom. And it's not until here when you get the true answers as to who Shadow is from Eggman. And while some people said that they experienced it around the 9-minute mark, mine came up around the 7-minute mark. But suffice to say, it did take me a little while to beat Devil Doom after 3 tries. I eventually found out that you actually need to charge up the strongest Chaos Spear in order to hit his eye. The one thing you don't want to do is use Chaos Control, as not only do the attacks mean nothing in this case, at least from my experience, you don't want your rings to deplete down to 0. I mean, realistically speaking, that's like for every other Sonic game that had to rely on using Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and so forth as a means to try and beat the game. So I did the old-fashioned one-hit-and-go method. And it worked. But after you kick his ass, Bobby, Shadow uses Chaos Control to teleport the giant testicle in front of the Ark to blow it up. And then the President and Commander honor Gerald's legacy as the day is saved. And Shadow once again puts the past behind him.
We hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater.
This is being a dead horse already, but this is the worst Sonic game. Canon, non-canon, it doesn't matter. If you haven't played it yet, I highly doubt I'm going to change your mind. To me, I do view this as the worst thing to come out of Sega for the Blue Blur. Because while we have other stinkers like Sonic 06, Forces, and Superstars to name a few, those games I've just mentioned still had the focus of just beating the level and progressing forward with the story. The story itself, even without the last story segment, is a mess. It makes you bounce all over the place worse than a conspiracy theory ever put onto a bulletin board, and completely ruins the legacy of not just Shadow's characterization, but the lore in general. And it doesn't flow together properly in this case. And with throwing in the Gun Commander and Black Doom in the mix of Shadow's character arc, it makes things feel empty as they're just there for the sake of expanding the lore, and there being no closure to both characters. It honestly feels like a bad DeviantArt fanfic. The gameplay is also all over the place. While the controls are decent to say the least, at least on the GameCube version of the game, the only 2 changes I would do to make it better are the spin dash and not bother with the punches and kicks. And the fact that the game is so picky with how you do the missions is what makes the game suck the most. Oh, and some of the stages here are recycled for other stages in the game. The graphics and level design aren't better, unfortunately. The former having to rip models off from heroes to save time and money to blend in with the new models here adds a level of uncanny valley to the game's atmosphere. As for the level design, there are some elements of what makes a Sonic game be a Sonic game, but it feels too dull, boring, lifeless, and not as creative as before, even if all you're doing is killing enemies, which, by the way, still attack you no matter what allegiance you're on. And I know Jason Griffith has gotten better in his acting arsenal from his tenure as the Blue Blur, and I also have a soft spot for Dan Green because of my nostalgia for Yu-Gi-Oh! But the transition from the original dub cast from the Dreamcast era to the 4Kids cast also makes this game suffer. Though, to be fair, despite Mike Pollock being a piece of shit today, they at least had to fill in Dean Bristow's shoes somehow with this regard. I'm sorry, but I never liked Sonic X when I was 10 due to the retrend of the Adventure 1 and 2 storytelling being told in anime form. And it still shows most of the performances in here are not that good. Though you might be asking if I found some good in this game. Well, a handful of the vocal tracks are great. My top 3 personally in order being Chosen One by Mona Lisa Overdrive, Waking Up by Julian Kay given how Chester Bennington had connections with those people in the band. God rest his soul. And the song I feel the most connection to, even as a normal human being a part of society, Never Turn Back by Crush 40. Yeah, that's it. This game is to Sonic as to what this is to Transformers, as to what this is to Star Wars as a whole. Just an insult to an IP that doesn't deserve any recognition at all. Just to list a few examples. But to make it simple, this is my second time ever beating the game, just with the 10 endings in particular, and it'll be my very last. Though if you really want to 100% this game for even more torture, there are 326 different pathways you have to complete. No thanks, but as you can tell from the title of this video, some of you might be asking why I haven't left Sonic after having this Frankenstein's monster of a contraption be exposed to me. Well, I thought about it at 12 when I got this at a discounted price for my PS2 back in the day, but I decided not to. Granted, back then, I never got to complete the game on the iconic brick since not only did I not know what to do back then regarding completing the game, but it was also around the time where I somewhat distanced myself from Sonic stuff until Generations came out for me. And I also remember when my mother and I were just shopping at a store, I can't remember which one, where Sonic and the Secret Rings was out at the time, and my mother pulled it out and was looking for stuff to add on to the Wii library at the time. But my reaction was like, yeah. So glad I skipped it. But thinking about it now, it also gave me a reminder as to why I got into Sonic in the first place, and loved Shadow since his debut game. This franchise is my earliest piece of personal nostalgia that I didn't want to let go of. Even when I look at any Shadow merch on the store shelves today, it doesn't remind me of the slop that I just reviewed. It automatically reverts me back to the time where gaming became the escape from reality, while dealing with the unfortunate circumstance of having divorced parents, and dealing with a piece of shit sperm donor exposing me to the Dreamcast. And having the console automatically in my hands also made me fall in love with Shadow when I started playing Adventure 2, or even Sonic as a whole with Adventure 1. The same goes for Transformers Armada and Yu-Gi-Oh! As to why those two things have a special place in my heart as well, even outside of just nostalgia. And those were all before transitioning from childhood to teenhood. I mean, granted, nostalgia can hurt an IP if it's overused to an unhealthy degree, but it can also remind us of a simpler time in our lives where things, like I said, used to be just simple, even with pieces of entertainment being more of a temporary solution to our lives. And in all honesty, without Sonic being a part of my gamer core, I don't even know what other franchise would birth that for me, nor would I know where I would be today because of it. And even if Yuji Naka isn't a squeaky clean person himself, I at least thank him, Naoto Oshima, and Takashi Iizuka, minus the writing from Takashi-san for all this, for making things possible with the blue blur. I know I've been harsh on this game, and I could have been harsher, but this game is already insulting to life itself that yelling like an enraged Billy Mays isn't worth it. And as Johnny mentioned in his Sonic 06 video, he did say this.
There's one thing I'm glad about this game is that it exists in the first place. It represents what many people believe to be the absolute worst of Sonic's 3D career. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom in order to see that something is terribly wrong, and you know what? Sega realized that.
And in context to what he said for that game, while this isn't what made Sega change their ways and redeem themselves to some degree, one of the people who worked on this actually redeemed himself 15 years later. And his name is Jeff Fowler. Yep. Next time, I'll be looking at Sonic 3, so looks like you guys will be getting your revenge for when that time comes. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. じゃあな。